Adoption is expensive, very, very expensive. It is $1 billion business where thousands of children are adopted out every year. There are over 350,000 children in the U.S. alone that are in the foster care system. Out of that 350,000 children, only 100 or so thousand are eligible for adoption. It usually takes about 3 to 4 years for a child to be adopted out of the foster care system. Around the world, there are 153 million orphans in foster care and orphanages waiting to be adopted. Most are one-parent families, and some have lost both parents, and they're waiting to be adopted. U.S. families adopted more than 7,000 children last year alone. Many parents come from their first meeting to find out about adoption dismayed, they're shocked, they're discouraged because they find out how much it costs to adopt a child. It's so expensive. It's anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 to adopt a child domestically, and that is for a private adoption. An adoption through international means costs much more because you have travel, visas, and paperwork that needs to be done between the governments. The NCA private domestic relations have risen steadily over the last several years between the nations. A lot of nations have put sanctions on adoption because there have been some problems with international adoptions. One case scenario is a woman from Tennessee who adopted a child from China. The child gave her problems and she couldn't cope with them, so she sent the child back to China on an airplane by herself with a note stating that she could no longer take care of him. Well, that caused some big problems, and because of that and other incidents, countries have decided to look closer into adoptions. When there used to be thousands of adoptions that would take place every year internationally, with China, Ethiopia, and Russia being the major adoption points for international adoption. Out in China, there were only 2,306 adoptions, Ethiopia 993, and Russia 250 last year alone. So the trend doesn't appear to be stopping either. So domestic adoption is easier right now for Americans than international adoption. There are 3 types of adoption basically. One is the domestic private adoption, most expensive. 2, domestic foster care, least expensive. And 3, international adoption. Now, the domestic private adoption, you have to hire a lawyer, which is very expensive. The reason that the professionals say it costs so much to adopt a child is because of this reason here. You have to have a lawyer to take care of the paperwork, all the legal work. There are home studies, there are social studies, there is paperwork, just tons of paperwork, and all of this costs money. Plus, most people have to pay for the adoption agency fees, and if you adopt internationally, you have to pay that orphanage a fee to adopt. Well, in the United States, when a person adopts privately, the adopting parent is responsible for taking care of the medical bills for the birthing mother, plus the medical bills for the child, plus the legal fees. Any fees the adopting parent has to take care of gets very expensive. The wait times for adoption are 75% of domestic adoptions wait time is 1 to 12 months. A person can know that, have a birth mother, and the couple can know that they're going to adopt that child, but when that child is born, it can still take 1 to 12 months before they can have the child in their custody. And the factors that factor into this are race and contact with the birth parents, medical background, and of course the budget for the parents. So the domestic costs for private adoption are way more expensive. The adoption agency has an overhead, there's counseling cost, there's government fees. Foster care adoption is the most affordable. The government a lot of times will help with foster care adoptions. They'll help with the cost of the attorneys and the home studies, and sometimes it doesn't even cost anything if you adopt out of foster care. Very seldom, but sometimes you can get away with not paying anything. And that's what the point of this discussion is, that adoption should be made easily affordable so that anyone who is a loving, caring person and wants to adopt a parentless child, a homeless child, can be able to afford to. All children need a home. They need a loving home. And there are a lot of people out there that are willing to give their love to their children, these children, and they can't afford it because it's just too expensive. A lot of people mortgage their homes to adopt children, and that puts them in a financial strain before anything's ever done. So I think, if the government can help with programs like helping people to keep their homes or help to buy a business, it would be a great idea for the government to help people be able to afford to adopt a child. I understand that there are a lot of costs in adopting a child, but I believe the government could step in and make it a little bit easier for a loving person to adopt a child that needs to be adopted. Right now, there are no government funds for children to be voluntarily placed because of the expenses with social workers and determination from the parents and counseling and post-placement supervision. And even when the families are put together and the adopted child goes to live with a family, there's still expenses because there's post-placement visits. They have to sometimes obtain dual citizenship from international adoption. So if you're wanting to adopt, it is my suggestion that you investigate it. Go online, read anything you can about it, talk to an adoption agency, see what avenues you can take to adopt a child affordably. But I really believe that if we all would pull together and maybe, write our congressman or write our government, and tell them there's so many children in adoption agencies that need to be adopted, need loving homes. Maybe somebody will listen and it'll matter. So, and that's how I feel about it. Thank you.